Jeff Santos Show on the Revolution Radio Network. Rebuilding America. Together. Invested.
It is hour 3 of the Jeff Santos Show, and welcome to it, folks. Coming to you live from the South Coast here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Great to be with you on this Friday edition of the broadcast. And we, of course, are going to make it a great one to remember. We're going to be talking to our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield in a number of seconds here, usually with us at 5:30 p.m., but we're going to be talking a little baseball today with Galen White, author of many books, a minor league baseball historian, and we'll talk to Galen at 5:34 today. Also Eastern time. Next week, folks, we'll be back on track on the regular Monday through Friday schedule, or off for Memorial Day last week, of course. And we're hoping to get back Ben Jealous, amongst many others, and trying to see if we can get Larry Cohen from Our Revolution as well. Of course, very, very close ally and confidant of Mr. Bernie Sanders. He was the chair of the Sanders campaign in 2020 and a key player in the progressive movement. So we'll try to get Larry to give us some thoughts about where we are on the filibuster and many other issues. Okay, let's get this final hour of the first week of June started. And no place else to go but the most progressive part of the West Coast. Yes, that is a reason for those in San Francisco to wonder. But Seattle, WA, just look at it, folks. They were the first to pass the minimum wage in CTAC. They were the first on legalizing marijuana. You can go on and on and on. They have a pretty good track record. So San Francisco, eat your heart out. It's time to go to the great music place, which also is on the great part of the Seattle metropolitan area, and talk to our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield. Happy Friday, Mark. Jimi Hendrix fans, eat your heart out. I love that intro. How you doing, MTC?
Hey, Jeff. Well, I don't know what it's like in Boston and that area of the country, but where I live, we've had some absolutely beautiful weather since Memorial Day weekend. Don't tell anyone. But I've been out on the water almost every day, enjoying this great environment, watching bald eagles on one side of the Ballard Locks and seals on the other. But it's really nice because you can moor your boat at the public docks all over the city and tie up at the waterfront restaurants and have your favorite chowder at Ivor's Salmon House or the White Swan or other great pubs. And then
but do you get New England clam chowder, or you get that phony stuff from Manhattan? What kind of chowder are you getting?
No. I'm not drinking any beer that's not a great microbrew from the Northwest. And I'm not eating any chowder that looks like there's tomato paste in it. So no, it's got to be the good stuff. But we've had great events at a lot of the local parks and stuff, too, where people, since there's no festivals, the music venues haven't opened yet, a lot of businesses aren't open. And so at Gasworks Park and other outdoor areas in Seattle, there's this festival atmosphere every weekend now where there's fire dancers and DJs and Black Wall Street events and marching bands and rock bands. And my friend Paul was out there playing his electric bagpipes. But it's a good way to, interact with people. You get your social distancing, but you can also, take your family to the parks. You don't have to pay a cover, right? And you can bring grandma and the dog. So it's been great. Swimming in Lake Washington, just hanging out in the great outdoor areas here. And then I'm really happy to say that I just got a couple prints from one of my favorite artists, Jose Rodriguez Guerra, who's an internationally acclaimed artist. So he gave me some prints last night after performing in his gallery. So I'm really happy now because now I have some of my own, Seattle art that I at my own home. It's really nice. He's a very nice man. I consider it sort of payment for all the times I've performed there, I guess.
Well, you deserve it, my man. And hey, you're moving on up. That's just the way it has to be. And it's good. We need people who can take the next step. I think that's an important piece of how we get America to be a better place. People need to climb the ladder and not get thrown the ladder off like a lot of people have done.
I hope that the clubs open up again, though, soon, though, because Seattle is so, art and music is so important to the city. And I think after not having it for a year, we will all appreciate it so much more now that we've gone without it for so long. So I think it's going to be really, beautiful experience for people to actually finally get to go see some band at an outdoor festival or something. And I think, people would probably do that, but the major festivals like Bumbershoot and Folklife and the other ones like Sasquatch and stuff, they take like a year's preparation. So there's no way for those events to suddenly just, put on
I remember the days. It seems like yesterday, but it's not. It was Bumbershoot 1994. It was Jackson Browne. And what was the group from Texas that was kind of popular back then? Their one-word name, and that'll come to me. But those were the days, and I'm hoping the Bumbershoot comes back, and I hope next year I can go back and visit with you and check out the great festival there. Hey, all this going on, and of course you got a mayor's race going on, and it's going to be interesting here to see who comes out. Again, I think you guys can make claim to being, in terms of big cities, the most progressive big city in America. I think San Francisco has failed, become more Silicon Valley corporate-y. A lot of other cities have fallen into that. And, of course, you guys got Amazon hovering over you, but and of course, our friends at Microsoft, too. But I think you've done a pretty good job of being progressive there. The fact that Savant is still, still there after being, basically trying to be destroyed by the Amazon folks, and she's grown to be stronger than ever, right?
Yeah, Shama Savant, our Alternative Socialist Party city council member, has a national appeal now and a national support. So when they go after her and cause her to have to defend herself in court from these recall initiatives, then she ends up going online and having huge fundraisers, so people all across the country end up sending her money. So it's kind of backfires on the business community. It's just helping her get a wider reach. And we do have our issues here. Despite being a progressive city, we also, during the latest homeless count, there are 12,000 people living without permanent housing in the Martin Luther King Jr. Seattle metropolitan area. So that's a shameful statistic. And every mayor, by the way, we're in the middle of a big mayoral race. There's a bunch of candidates who've thrown their hats in the ring. But every year we see this. You talk about, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, the Who song. Every mayor, every mayoral candidate claims that they are going to directly address this issue with homelessness. We had Mayor Jenny Durkan, the former U.S. attorney under the Obama administration. She told me straight up that, every person in Seattle deserves to have a place to live. And yet, during her reign, she's not only, destroyed the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone and had a bunch of people arrested and stood behind the police department who was using excessive force and tons of crowd control munitions and tear gas and just incredible amounts. But so she stood behind them even during that, and there are still sweeps of homeless camps. So that order has to be coming down from the mayor's office somewhere. So I'm not fooled. Other people aren't fooled. She has decided not to run for re-election, and as if I were her political consultant, I would have said, that's the brilliantest idea you've had all year, Jenny, because you're not going to win.
Thank you. That'll be $25,000. Mail it to P.O. Box 25, yeah.
Meanwhile, we do have someone that I had kind of, been keeping an eye on because she's been really supportive of the Black Lives Matter movement, a poet-educator named Nikita Oliver. And I expected her to run for mayor, but she's actually running for District 4, that seat on the Seattle City Council. So our council is mixed. Some seats are based on neighborhood representation, but 2 seats are considered to be representing the entire city at large. But she's running for District 4. It's not my district. Actually, Shama Sawant is my council member. Actually, Andrew Lewis, the Robert Reich protege, yeah, he's actually my council member now because of this switch. But I'm looking at a slate of candidates, and the ones that have the most name recognition are the former president of the Seattle City Council, and that's Lorena Gonzalez. There's also Bruce Harrell, who's also the former president of the council and was the head of the public safety committee, when, he accused the Seattle police of causing a riot by, violently arresting people in the middle of a peaceful march. And I consider, him a friend. I've known him for years. And all of these candidates, by the way, that I've mentioned so far, including Colleen Echohawk, who is enrolled as a member of the Pawnee Nation, so a Native American, they're all folks of color. Omar Tarif Garrett is an activist, a civil rights activist from Seattle. He's running for mayor, and he was part of an occupation of a building that eventually, was turned into the African American Heritage Museum. There's actually a current occupation going on there right now, which we can talk about at future shows because it's an ongoing news story. But and it involves, in parties like, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, all sorts of things. But there are currently activists that are occupying that building, and Omari was one of them that I think actually got tear gassed probably several times by the Seattle police when they were trying to hold on to that building and turn it over to the community. But they're all folks of color, and I think, that's kind of indicative of the times that we're in. Colleen Echohawk has held, I think, 40 different online community meetings in each neighborhood, and that's because it's a way of soliciting donations from folks holding what we call these democracy vouchers, because all the city elections are publicly funded at this point. And that was the result of a citywide initiative that the people themselves organized. So the voters of the city basically got together and said, this is what we're going to do. And it passed on a referendum measure across the city. So now we all get $100 in democracy vouchers, which we can divide up and give to different candidates of our choice. Colleen is soliciting, democracy vouchers. Nikita Oliver, everybody is sort of appealing to individuals, and each voter gets to be sort of the big wheel and the big donor because they need all of us, and that means they have to really get popular support in order to get funded for their campaigns. They can't rely on a couple big party donors or big corporate donors, because we do have Starbucks, Amazon, Microsoft, Boeing.
Oh, yeah.
Name it here.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt you guys got your share of corporate titans. We're talking with Mark Taylor-Canfield here on the Jeff Santos Show. We'll open up the phone lines at 772-223-2362. And before we get to John in Minneapolis, there is this case with Ellis, that you foreshadowed. Where are the political heroes? I think we hear a lot about Mr. Ferguson. That goes back to 2017 and his role in protecting immigrants' rights and so forth. But give us a lay of the land, because in Minnesota, for instance, you had Keith Ellison step to the plate, and if it wasn't for his work as Attorney General and the team that he put in the court that you might have seen on TV during the trial, you may still see Mr. Chauvin running around, the streets of Minneapolis, alive and well and still on the job. How do we look at this? I mean, is the city attorney dealing with this case? Is Mr. Ferguson as the Attorney General? How are we looking at what has happened again to another young African American?
Well, Manuel Ellis was killed last year while in police custody, while handcuffed. It was ruled a homicide. These are the Tacoma Police Department. So it was a Pierce County event, and then Tacoma is just south of Seattle on Puget Sound. So King County and Pierce County are right next to each other. So what happened is basically the governor and Bob Ferguson stepped in. Bob Ferguson is our very fearless state attorney general who's filed numerous lawsuits against the Trump administration and bragged that he won about 9 out of 10. So he's very popular. He and Governor Inslee both won their re-elections with huge numbers. So they got a lot of broad-based support, at least on this side of the state. They stepped into the case, and Bob Ferguson charged 2 of the Tacoma police officers with second-degree murder, and then a third officer with manslaughter. And it's being called rightly or wrongly. I don't think that there's any equivocation that should go on in any of these cases. But people in the media have called it, the the George Floyd of the Northwest, sort of, because it was a very similar situation. And I know that this story has been brewing for a long time. I've been covering it for a year. It wasn't getting much international news coverage or national news coverage, but now the Washington Post is on it, and the Guardian, and the New York Times. So it's hit national, and I think we'll be hearing more and more about it. And it just comes down to the fact that I think, from one point of view, is that the fact that the state attorney general stepped in might be the reason why we actually have second-degree murder charges against those two officers. Because in the past, Washington State used to have the weakest law in the nation regarding prosecution of police. But recent legislation made it easier to hold cops accountable, and more laws are right now on their way through the state legislature, which will address the problem, which do have, wide support amongst the Democrats at least. So, it's a touchy situation in Seattle because the Seattle Police Department was investigated here by the Justice Department for excessive use of force and racial profiling. They're working under a consent decree. So all of this, this policing in these so-called progressive cities has to be addressed in Minneapolis and in Seattle and in Portland and in many other cities around the country. And Manuel Ellis is the latest name, sadly to say, and I hate reporting these things, but it's another name in a long list of names. And there are memorials. No doubt.
It keeps going on and on and on, and it's so awful to hear it. And when you get a chance to talk to Mr. Blake, the uncle of Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back, by police, and of course, where there were kids in the car, and then his own uncle gets basically brutalized by folks putting him in a restraining chair that caused a rotator cuff. This is where we are. Unfortunately, if you're a black man in America, you better watch out because no jurisdiction is safe. And even though there was some justice in terms of the guilty verdict when it came to Mr. Chauvin, it's still a long way from where we need to be. All right, let's go to Minneapolis, where the Floyd family is, and that case that a lot of people got engaged and marched in the streets came out of Minneapolis. Let's go to John. You're next with Mark Taylor-Canfield. Go ahead, John.
Well, I hope they do stay around here because there's an impromptu memorial there. And, a lot of very powerful people in the community, like CARE, Council on Arab Relations, and other groups, wanted to stay. And this would be a memorial that, would be from the people. It really would be something, I think, that would help people to grieve this situation and to continue to grieve it, and then hopefully impact positively the city council. And, we're already on the ballot is an initiative to change the law on policing when it comes to, it's the commission that we have that sets the amount of police. It's set in stone. And that needs to change, and they are going to do that. I think that my city council person, he's probably going to be primaried out, I believe, because the other person, who's an African American, is got a lot of clout, I think, in terms of voters. And I think mine needs to go. He's just a shill for the real estate interests and whatnot. I don't think he really cares one way or the other about George Floyd or policing. But policing, we're a progressive city, but policing was left out. And
well, let me ask you this, John, because I think that one of the things that they're facing now in Seattle, and you can interject, Mark, is that they are relying on the Attorney General, much like you did with Ellison. I mean, you said it to us that if it wasn't for Ellison, Chauvin would still be walking around.
Yeah, it definitely. If it wasn't, Keith Ellison handled that. He took it over from the state. Also, the other gentleman that was murdered, Durante, I can't remember his last name, from Brooklyn Park.
Right.
He's taking that over. And if it wasn't for them. If it was the Hennepin County prosecutor, forget it. It would have gone for the police department for sure. I think it's a drawn conclusion that it would. But Ellison handled that absolutely great. We had a lot of great expert testimony, and also testimony from people who were there and saw what happened, from George Floyd's girlfriend. And I think if we didn't have all of that, plus the 9.5 minutes that one young woman bravely, had the presence of mind of doing, it
would have been a different story.
And then, let's not forget Philando Castile. That's another issue.
That's another one.
And
another one with the video in the car.
Well,
exactly. Let me ask you this, Mark Taylor-Canfield. Is it what happened in Minneapolis? How much is Ferguson looking at that, looking at what Ellison did, and using that as sort of a blueprint for what he wants to do in this case?
I think I would only be able to speculate about that. I haven't actually been able to talk to him about it, but I think he must have looked at that case. The whole country, the whole world has been looking at that case, and from what I can tell, just from what it looks like on the ground here, and then having covered it since last year, this is one of those breaking stories that is going international, and there will be a movement, and there already is a movement behind Manny Ellis. Because of the fact that it was such a brutal thing that happened. And in similar, it's a very moving testimony whenever I hear Justin Blake on your program. It's really important media when that happens. I think the spotlight will still be there in Minneapolis because the sentencing hasn't happened yet, right?
We're still waiting for that.
Purposeful delay in that, I'm sure.
Well, Mr. Mark, we wish you the best.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Mark. You keep fighting for us. We will talk to you next Friday. We'll talk a little bit more music as well. Mark, we thank you for John, we thank you for the call as well. It is the Jeff Santos Show. We'll be right back with Galen White. You're tuned in to the Revolution Radio Network.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters in Washington. President Biden is portraying the May jobs report as a jumping-off point for more spending on infrastructure and education. It's an argument for his broader agenda to keep the growth going. But Friday's employment numbers also hinted at the limits of how much government aid can be pumped into the world's largest economy. The 559,000 jobs added were less than what many economists were expecting. A separate figure indicates that too few people are looking for jobs compared to demand from employers. This mismatch means that wages are rising sharply, but it also means that inflation could be elevated until market forces sort out supply chains and hiring. On Wall Street, a good day as the Dow was up by 179 points. The Nasdaq rose 199. More details at srnnews.com.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Our good friend Alan Minsky on yesterday, because he was off on Monday, talked that cinema is the tougher one because he thinks Manchin can be bought off. The issue there, though, is that
I think cinema. I don't even know what cinema is about. I think there's
about herself,
I think
basically.
There's nothing, right? Exactly, because there's really nothing there other than herself. You're right.
Right. She's just another person. She wants to see the camera on her, and if it turns away and goes to somebody else, she's going to have a hissy fit. So that's unfortunately where she is. I mean, like a lot of men and women of the Senate, it's all about who they are. And, the other part of this that really frustrates me is that the mainstream media is going to take this fight, this filibuster. It's not going to be about democracy or saving the nation or any of that stuff. It's going to be the personalities. Who really is Kristen Sinema? Who really is Joe Manchin? Is Joe Biden really the guy from the 1970s? Or it's that sort of BS that we're going to have to live through over these next few months. All right, let's go to San Francisco, talk to our good friend Mark in the great city of San Francisco, the city by the bay. How you doing, Mark? You're next with Harvey K.
Yeah, Jeff and Harvey, I understand that the next audit is going to be done in Wisconsin on the ballots.
Yes, I have heard that as well.
I thought Georgia was going to be the next.
They're headed up to Wisconsin.
Oh, God. I feel like what have I been doing all day? I guess I've been running errands. I didn't hear any of this. Oh, my God.
Yeah. So that's what I heard, that they're going to be going through the audits over there. Well, you've got a few Republicans over there, so...
they control the state legislature.
The legislature is Republican. A very reactionary Republican Party commands the legislature. I do want to say this. I don't believe that these audits have any hope of changing anything. However, what they're really about is sustaining the momentum of this right-wing Republican Party. That is, they're sustaining, if you like, the hope that they can win in 2021 or 2024. That's what it's about. It's a public relations gimmick, period. But it's a public relations gimmick that Biden has yet to figure out, or the Democrats have yet to figure out how to respond to effectively. We talk about Biden, we talk about the Democrats, but what we're failing to realize is the degree to which they have yet to truly, and I shouldn't put it in these terms given what happened on January 6th, but they have yet to figure out how to truly declare war on these folks who are trying to take apart democracy.
I totally agree, Harvey. You're right, and I think that needs to be the next line drawn in the sand by the Democrats. And I also think the Attorney General should be doing something about digging into ballots after this election. I think they're supposed to be held for a certain amount of days, 200 days, something like that. I don't know, but the Attorney General should get involved in this because this is a mess.
Well, it is, but here's the other point. If I'm not mistaken, the Attorney General, Garland, who was not exactly Mr. Liberal when he was put up by Obama, he was the compromise choice, right? So he apparently on this, and I think you'd love to hear this, Mark, he actually is saying, I think it's Trump's tax returns, are not going to be released by the DOJ. I mean, again, what is he protecting? Is he concerned? It's this mentality again. Well, if Donald Trump's stuff gets released, and what about when I leave the White House? They're going to go after me too. It's always the CYA stuff, and people can figure it out for themselves what CYA is. And the fact is that this is the problem. You're right, Mark, but the Attorney General is the Attorney General, and is not exactly. What is it, Ramsey, the guy from LBJ, Harvey? That was,
Ramsey Clark?
Ramsey Clark, yeah. I mean, this is not the
name
most...
that comes to mind.
Yeah, it's not the most progressive Attorney General we've ever had. I get all these Clarks.
Yeah, I get all these folks mixed up. I apologize. Clark Clifford, Ramsey Clark, I don't know.
Well, Jeff?
Yeah.
Jeff, this goes to the bigger problem of not wanting to prosecute any Republicans. And Biden doesn't want to get involved in any of this because he's afraid that he's going to look like he's going after Trump and the Republicans. And that kind of being a coward just comes back to haunt us because these people get away with murder and keep going further.
Right.
Yeah,
you can talk all you want about patriotic America, but go ahead, Harvey.
Yeah, well, it started when they didn't prosecute the bankers. I mean, they didn't. And, God, when you think about what Obama let the bankers get away with, and then the bailouts. And by the way, I was reading something recently that there's all these myths surrounding the bankers. They paid back what the government laid out to them. I think people should look into that more deeply. On top of which, they all... Did you see this past year, CEOs once again walked away with millions, and working people walked away with practically nothing, and obviously they lost their shirts in many cases.
Exactly.
It's. I mean, seriously speaking, the more you think about it, you got to wonder why people vote at all. But the fact is that we remain hopeful. That must be that's the disease of progressives and maybe of the American people overall.
Well, yeah, because once again, we've been bamboozled again and again and again, or as the Who would say, fooled again. And, hopefully, as Roger Daltrey would say, we won't get fooled again. That's where we're at. Mark, great points, as usual, my friend. Just about a minute and a half here, Harvey. I am hoping that somebody or somebodies, it's not grammatically correct, but you know where I'm going.
I do know it, yeah.
Going to have to put pressure on the outside. I just don't think that the internal elements that protect Joe Biden, that are the money people behind him, the people that saw him as the savior, to defeat Donald Trump, they are not going to be the leaders. They are not going to be the ones that take down the corporate entity that is Joe Manchin, that is the Republican Party. And I don't know where that's coming from. Maybe it's somebody like Reverend Barber. Maybe it's unions organizing along with maybe Black Lives Matter. Wouldn't that be nice to see, the head of Black Lives Matter and Mr. Trumka, sit down and say, how can we organize like they did in the 1960s? Absolutely. That to me is yet, I don't know if it's going to happen, but to me that's where we need to go. And frankly, it's long overdue, as we have talked about on this show for a long, long time. I mean, we're going back now, 55 years since a lot of things that we would like to do today were accomplished. Medicare, civil rights, Medicaid, voting rights, and so forth.
Immigration reform. They did it all.
Yeah.
In the 60s. They hit all the bases. They didn't necessarily... The one thing they failed to do was to basically revive the rights of labor in the 60s. That they failed to do.
Yeah, no doubt. And for me, the way that I see this, Harvey, is that it's all there because now people are seeing the contrast between Trump and, say, at the very least, the Sanders progressive movement. And, it's not hard to show the contrast. But Joe Biden doesn't want to show the contrast. He's sort of, he protects Trump on the idea of protecting his taxes and not the DOJ not releasing it. On one hand, he doesn't go after, the big corporate folks. It's this in-between. Harry Truman, no big liberal, hardly FDR Jr., said, look, when you get two Republican parties, the authentic one wins every time, which is true. So I don't know where Joe Biden is going. He's not going to, outcarve his way to being, the Republicans all of a sudden going to make up the new Democratic Party. Ain't going to fly.
Okay.